Depending on what year you would ask about Jerry Tillery, you'd get a ton of different answers about whether he's doing well or not. Welcome to the Everyman series on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. Camp is coming up. We've got some Everyman series to wrap up. That is what we're doing today. So thank you so much for hanging out. If you are new here, welcome to the Everyman series and to the Locked On Vikings podcast. You can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just search out Locked On Vikings wherever you listen to your favorite shows, including YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku, if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Real quick before we get started, quick news update. Jordan Addison arrested in LA this weekend over suspicion of DUI. So as of this recording, I have limited details. Things are still coming out, information still coming out, and I definitely don't need to be the first person to talk about everything. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to put a pin in that. We'll talk about that and its repercussions. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions about suspension and stuff like that. If you have specific questions about them, get them to me for Twitter Tuesday. But I'm going to put a pin in that until I have a little more information, and instead we can just move forward with the planned itinerary for today's episode, which is the Everyman series about Jerry Tillery. Jerry Tillery likes stocks. I think that's kind of fun and appropriate. The way his career has gone has very much modeled one of those like stock charts where if you zoom in to the day-to-day, it is up and it's down and it's up and it's down. But over time, he has learned and grown from both those ups and those downs. And he has liked stocks even since he was in high school. You would see him like checking on the NASDAQ, and he has had like a subscription to the Economist econ major. He's always liked that financial side of things. There are a lot of things that Jerry Tillery is like a huge nerd about. It feels like there is like a law of nature that the Vikings have to have at least one defensive lineman that's like kind of a brainiac and kind of a Renaissance man that is like nerdy about a bunch of stuff and wants to live life to the fullest and loves travel. Tillery loves Hawaii. He was actually in Hawaii do you remember a few years ago when they accidentally like sent a false alarm that there was going to be a missile strike in Hawaii and everybody like freaked out first? He was there. He was like on vacation there at the time going, oh my God. And it was like the scariest 38 minutes of his life. And now he's like, yeah, well, that was interesting, because he's always doing interesting things. He's always into interesting things. You could talk to him about books. You could talk to him about finances, and he'll talk your ear off. He actually took a visit with Dartmouth. He wants to be a doctor after football. He didn't end up going to Dartmouth because he got a scholarship to Notre Dame, and he actually enrolled early in Notre Dame, which is a great destination for if you want to have a quality education and a useful degree, and also you want to play football. I mean, this was Brian Kelly, peak Notre Dame, right? That's a great program to go to. As a freshman, he actually showed up. Most of high school he played O-tackle, and he actually showed up thinking he would play tackle, but they tried him out at D-tackle, and they found this like revelation. They saw Brian Kelly thought, oh, he's like really good with his hands. Let's see how he does on the pass rush on the inside. Stick him right at nose and see what he does. And they found that like quickness made him virtually unblockable. As a freshman, he was like dunking on juniors. And they were like, whoa, this guy's really interesting. And I think that got the media a little more interested than they would usually be in a true freshman at college, right? So then they started talking to him, and then they found out how interesting this guy is. And every camera, every microphone took to him. At the time, the Showtime series, I think it's just called did a season with Notre Dame, and they latched on to Jerry Tillery, and in particular, his relationship with Sheldon Day, and his antics, I guess you would call them. It's really hard to pin this guy down. And it's very much because I don't know this guy. I'm going off of the descriptions of people that do know this guy, which vary wildly depending on when you knew him. But even people that knew him at the same time, like, struggle to describe just what it is that makes him such a compelling guy to be around. Some people say that he's goofy. Some people say, oh my God, he's the funniest guy I've ever known. Like, he's got funny facial expressions, but the team really likes to mess with him. And it seems pretty all in good fun and harmless. There's this really funny moment that I think it's Sheldon Day or somebody on his team loves it. Like, they just kind of walk up to him, like squirt him with the water bottle and walk away. And he reacts like very cartoonishly, over dramatically. And it's just very funny. I think it was Sheldon Day, like, posted the recording of his reaction to watching that moment and like cracking up. So they love messing with this guy. They call him Tillery, which lasts for just the 1 year. And also his relationship. So Sheldon Day is older, and he's kind of the mentor of Jerry Tillery at Notre Dame. And they have like deep conversations, pillow talk into the night, and they become very good friends as kind of, almost like a big brother, little brother thing you'd see like a college fraternity. And it's all very fun freshman year for Tillery. He's a star. I mean, he gets all this great press off of the Showtime series. He is starting as a freshman. That always bodes very well. He's getting reasonable production. It's nothing that puts him in any, all college team, all conference teams or anything like that. But he's a freshman. Like, just getting in and being productive at all is like, whoa, like, that's a really big accomplishment. I mean, it's a fever dream there. Like, it's like this crazy whirlwind, but it's fun and they're good. I mean, it's Notre Dame, right? So you're doing a lot of winning. There's not a lot of stress on it. But crucially, at every juncture, everybody talks about how much fun Jerry Tillery is having until it's game time and it's time to, focus up and be serious. Then he'll be serious. But, practice and locker room and all of that stuff, he's just kind of always having fun and joking around and being messed with because he's a freshman and that's what you do. But this is not a Penn State situation. It seems harmless and fun. And this may be the most fun that football is for Jerry Tillery, because, and he'll reflect on this later, he's playing as loose as he ever will, and he's practicing as loose as he ever will. He says this later with a tinge of regret, like, I kind of was just focused on Saturday, just focused on game day, and everything else I would kind of go through the motions. And then game day, you show up and you lock in and you do your best. But like, shoot, that's no problem. You can have as much fun as you want if you're producing, if that works for you, right? Like, then that's the process that gets you success. And everybody's built a little bit different, right? Some people need to have this crazy intensity every single time. And hey, maybe some people are just gamers. Maybe he's just a gamer. The Fighting Irish will play against Ohio State that year in the Fiesta Bowl. This is 2015. And it is there where things start to sour. That'll be next on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the best place to find last-minute tickets anywhere you need to go. Whether it is a sporting event, maybe you're trying to get tickets to an upcoming Vikings game, you can get them. They're all listed now. You can get tickets to the home opener or whatever, or if they're coming to your town, you're a road team fan, or even the London game or something like that. All of that is there on Gametime. You can also find tickets to a Twins game or concerts, comedy shows, live theater, whatever. And you can find it last minute. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, comedy, concerts, or theater, or anything else. Your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So go seize the opportunity to buy tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks a million for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Sports Today's live stream. They will be cycling through Locked On shows 24/7 for a sports feed you will not find anywhere else. The Fiesta Bowl does not feature Jerry Tillery because Jerry Tillery is barred from playing in it. He's suspended for a mysterious violation of team rules, and they decide to sit him. Never find out what that is. You never will. It's just colleges are never going to say that. But it starts to sour the relationship a little bit. And that moment seems to sort of stick with him from a momentum perspective because his sophomore year is a struggle. It's a bad year for Notre Dame. They'll end up 4-8. And that's a lot of people that aren't used to losing a lot. So it's frustrating everywhere in Notre Dame. He doesn't take off the way that you would hope that a player who took a starting job, and by the way, his freshman year, the real starter got hurt, which is what gave him that opportunity. But he took that job and he never looked back. And so you would kind of expect, okay, now you're in the season where we were going to expect you to start. You're that far ahead of schedule. What do you have in store? Everybody at Notre Dame was so excited, but it doesn't really take off like he hopes. And again, if you ask people who played with him at this time, they were like, we didn't really recognize the guy. For all of the fun, jovial kind of shenanigans that were freshman year Jerry Tillery, sophomore year Jerry Tillery, it's like he tried to focus more. It's like he tried to take his game day attitude into every practice. And like, if that is the case, and I'm totally guessing here, but if that is the case, that is pretty reasonable, right? Like, if you're trying to take the next step forward and you go, hey, maybe I should like be a little bit more intense here. Maybe I'm being a little bit too lackadaisical about things. Maybe I should take that kind of motivation and you try to do it, right? But it is just not who he is. And he doesn't act the way that everybody's used to him acting. This will bubble out into the surface a couple of times over the course of the season. He clashes with coaches. He gets suspended again for violating team rules. There's this incident where there are rumors that Les Miles is going to come replace Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, like into this losing season, which in hindsight is very funny because now Brian Kelly's at LSU. But there are these rumors kind of going around, and Jerry Tillery likes the tweets about it. That doesn't go over well. Brian Kelly says, hey, look, I know the guy. He knows me. We have a personal relationship that has nothing to do with that. I don't even care. I didn't even know he liked the tweets, blah, blah, blah. They all say the right things. But it is a thing. I mean, like, imagine if that happened in the NFL, right? You've got, like, Kevin O'Connell is on the hot seat, and you had, like, Harrison Phillips liking that tweet. It would be a thing. And everyone close to him just kind of says, yeah, man, the guy's frustrated. Like, we are all frustrated, and he's frustrated, and this is how it's coming out for him. And then maybe that's just what it is, that everybody takes to losing a different way, and for him, it's a lot harder to be happy-go-lucky. But that's how everybody described him freshman year, was like happy-go-lucky. And it's what makes what he is known for this season so jarring. This sort of like out-of-pocket behavior. The last game that they'll play that year is against USC. And in that game, there'll be this infamous moment, which if you are a Los Angeles football fan, say you're a Chargers fan, also a USC fan, you are screaming at me. Because this is what Angelinos knew Jerry Tillery for, at least before he became a Charger, was this moment. It was at the Coliseum. It was at USC. A guy's down with an apparent head injury. And Jerry Tillery is kind of walking off the pile. And he sort of gets his foot like caught on the guy's head, on the injured guy's head. And he sort of kicks it out of the way. So the guy who kicked an injured player is now the moniker. This is who Jerry Tillery is to the entire nation. This blows up bigger than anything. It blows up bigger than the tweets, blows up bigger than the Showtime show that made him look really fun and happy. It blows up bigger than everything. This is like the story of the day. This is what Notre Dame's program has come to. And you know, we're kicking injured players. Later in that game, he'll like stomp on a player's leg. It is a bad day. I feel I should mention, like, you could go watch the clip. It's not like he wound up and he like tried to kick a field goal on this guy, but it is not good. It is, he's not stepping over the injured player. He's like pushing the guy's head out of the way, and it looks like it's an apparent head injury at the time. So USC fans are irate. I mean, this is the this gets as toxic can get. When he's asked about this in hindsight, he's asked about this his senior year at Notre Dame, and he's like, yeah, that was terrible. Like, he won't make any excuses. He's not going to say, oh, I was just frustrated. He was like, I shouldn't have done that. That was awful. I definitely don't identify with the guy that was. And I don't think, even if you asked him today, of all the different iterations of Jerry Tillery that we see over the years, the ups and the downs, I don't think that the one that the guy he was sophomore year is probably the one he would identify with the least. It just wasn't who he was. Gone was the quirk of the defensive lineman that reads books, but now he is just tagged as like a dirty player. And that's what he is known for in the city of Los Angeles. Keep that in mind. But after that, like, lambasting, he'll find a little bit more balance later in college. And really, his junior year goes well enough where he could get drafted if he decides to declare. And he won't, and we'll get to that. But really, I don't know if it's the story of a guy figuring it out or the story of a guy who, like, played bad but then played good or anything. I think it's just a kid growing up, It's a kid that got to a blue chip football program and immediately got the spotlight shown on him and immediately got showered with a whole bunch of praise. And he's asked about this in the same senior year interview I've been talking about. And he kind of says, like, I don't know if that was good for me. Because you got a little bit of a head on your shoulders, right? And all of that was almost too happy and too fun. And I think he overcorrected, right? Trying to ramp up the intensity or whatever it was. Maybe he was just frustrated and it just didn't prepare him for the frustrations that can come when a season isn't going well. Whatever it was, the next season, it just, pride cometh before the fall, right? Like, it just makes that season crash out that much harder. And assuming that you are past college age, you probably have a similar, like, emotional development that you can remember, right? Where you took the highs really high and you took the lows really low. And then at a certain point, you realize that sometimes stuff's high and sometimes stuff's low and, one foot in front of the other, and you even out a little bit. I just think that's part of growing up. Honestly, that's what a lot of these stories are. It's, this is a story of the journey to the NFL. Well, most of these people get to the NFL when they're 21 years old. So it's the journey of people growing up. These are all coming of age stories. And this is Jerry Tillery's. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy made easy, and it's made to be tailored directly to your schedule. So if you just want to do a video conference and you don't want to have to go to an office because of, how hard it is to get there from work or whatever, BetterHelp is there for you. You can also do it by phone or even by disconnected texts. That's kind of how they're set up to be comfortable for what you need. I've been in therapy for a long time, and it has helped me tremendously just to deal with the ups and downs of life. So if you're interested, give BetterHelp a shot. They'll hook you up with a therapist they think is right for you. And if you don't like that therapist, which definitely happens to a lot of people, therapists aren't always right. And it might take you a couple tries to find the person that is right for you. But BetterHelp's system is designed to give you that chance because you can freely switch between therapists. You can try a new one at no additional charge. So start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Like I said before, come Tillery's senior year, he had done enough to get drafted, or he was told by, I'm going to guess he was told by like that committee that kind of tells you, hey, here's what we're hearing about how NFL teams feel about you and will they draft you or not. And so he kind of knows that the NFL dream is within reach and it's there. Ultimately, he will decide to go back to Notre Dame, and it's a really tough decision for him, right? Because, hey, you're going to be an NFL draft pick. Do you want to delay that? There is a good reason to, right? You grow up one more year, you get one more year in a weight room, you can maybe put down a better year at tape and maybe get your draft stock up. But what if you get hurt, or what if something happens, right? What if you don't have as good of a year, now your draft stock goes down? There's like all kinds of risks, but he bets on himself and he goes back to Notre Dame for a year. And part of this is because he enrolled early, he has his degree now. and he can focus purely on football. And not only that, but the pressure is off a little bit. Once you hear, yeah, no, you did it. The NFL is interested in you. This is no longer speculative. You can relax a little bit. And you can feel it just in the tone of the quotes that he gives by his senior year, that he's a little bit more at peace. He is really comfortable with what happened his sophomore year, in that he's comfortable that he moved past it. He knows that he learned what he had to learn from that. He's not proud of it, but he doesn't want to hide from it, right? He knows that that's just, now that's part of my story that I have to deal with, and I know how to deal with it, and we can move on. Maybe that's the lesson here, though, for Jerry Tillery, that the most successful version of him was the happy-go-lucky, water bottle in the face version of the guy that'll sit you down and talk about the NASDAQ. That was unabashedly unafraid to be himself, even though that was very unfamiliar to everybody who was playing with and playing for. They were all like, this dude is really weird. But they meant it in a good way, but they all kind of tried to say without saying, like, this is a weird guy. And that was the best version of himself. That was the one that everybody loved playing with and everybody loved playing for, and that had the most success relative to like his age and his expectations. And if I'm right about that, then that's why. And if it was something else, then it was something else. But whatever it is, senior year goes great for him. And he will be a highly touted first-round draft pick in 2019. He falls to the Chargers. I think he was 28th. And that's actually further than people expected him to fall. He was a first rounder, a late first rounder, and people thought he should have been higher than that. So he is laid, like his bet absolutely pays off. And so he gets to go play in Los Angeles for the Chargers, which is kind of funny because Angelinos don't like this Notre Dame dirty kid, but USC fans aren't all Chargers fans too. Some of them are Rams fans. More of them are Raiders fans, let's be honest here. Or fans of whatever state they came from, because nobody's from LA, let's be honest. I know that pissed somebody off, and I'm glad that it did. Anyways, his Chargers tenure starts off a little weird. So he had a torn labrum after his senior year, and he had kind of played through it and had resolved to get surgery in the offseason. So he had shoulder surgery, that whole pre-draft process, which can sort of sink you, and that might be why he sunk a little further than he was supposed to, but everybody loved his tape so much, and they loved the way he used his hands and all that same stuff that Brian Kelly immediately saw. That he still goes in the first round, but it means that his opening training camp is a little weird, and he's going to get off to a slow start. That he's still kind of recovering from things, and he doesn't hit the ground running in the pros in the same way he did in college. It's pretty diametrically opposite. This affects the narrative that I understood about him for a long time, which is that he will be the lowest graded defensive tackle by PFF, and people will cite that all the time. People still cite that he was rookie year, he was the worst one. It kind of washes over what was a short-lived honeymoon phase after he's the first-round pick, and he wore these red socks that were fairly unique. They stood out a lot at the colors of a Chargers practice. There's not a lot of red, so he wears these red and white socks that, they are all also getting to know him for the first time, and he's a very interesting guy. So it's all the same, oh, this is a D lineman that read books, and there's this novelty to him that is very exciting to LA media. But as time goes on and that slow start starts to kind of set in, the honeymoon phase ends pretty quick. There are a lot of issues that year. This is 2019 Los Angeles Chargers. This is the final year of Phillip Rivers. This is the final year of Anthony Lynn. They would go 4-12 that year. But I think it's crucial. While Tillery struggled, and I think a lot of that had to do with the injury, and then just kind of, sometimes it's just hard to adjust to the NFL, and that's not even that abnormal for defensive tackles, even ones that work out. So on the field, there's all these problems, but you don't have the same off-field. You don't have the frustration. You don't have his teammates going, who is this guy? That I know of. There's whispers that we'll get to, but a 4-win season in the pros hits a little different than the way that he took it in Notre Dame when they had that 4-8 season, and it really just kind of broke his personality. So 2020 hits. It's the pandemic year, and it's weird, but it's also the first year of Brandon Staley. And he gets off on the right foot with Brandon Staley. They have a really good relationship to start. They decide to kind of move him around a little bit more. He's a dedicated 3-tech by this point. At some point in his career, they decided to kind of move him over and teach him a new stance and say, let's make you a little bit more about the quickness and a little bit less about the size, right? That's what the 3-tech thing is. And that's a better fit for him. And maybe the expectations fell away again, right? New head coach, everybody's adjusting, this isn't this, you remember like 2021 Zimmer, right? And how much pressure and stress was just on the whole operation because everything, there's a coach on the hot seat, right? Like everything is a little bit tense. And then the new guy comes in and it's all like, okay, we can all just like relax and get to know each other again. And this is a fresh start, right? Maybe the expectations wash away a little bit, or maybe it's something else, but he improves. Whatever it is, he goes back up. He ends up getting a little bit more production. He still doesn't have the sacks, which is kind of what you need to turn your narrative around. So his narrative is disastrous. Everybody who talks about him is talking about him as the bad PFF guy that doesn't get any sacks. That's a bad pick. And by the way, he's dirty. Remember that hit at USC? I remember that head kick thing. So a lot of Los Angeles fans come to hate him and still do. By 2021, the expectations were back. If you read like any preview article about the Chargers roster in 2021, it was Jerry Tillery as a breakout candidate. He took a step forward last year. This is going to be it. This is going to be the year. And it's, it is put up or shut up, right? Your first round pick, it's year 3. Okay. We're past the COVID thing. Like the excuses are out. You're right. This could have been Gus Bradley's fault. Gus Bradley was the DC when he first got there, but he's long gone, right? If this is going to work, we got to see it. And again, he produces, but in a more subtle way. And Brandon Staley himself likes it and defends him a lot to the media, but his narrative will not come around. And it's so tragic because he is such an enigma of a person that to be defined by essentially being the guy that got pressures, but not sacks, and a bunch of penalties. He's got a penalty problem. Like that gets people really, really frustrated. Like people are just frustrated with him all the time. And the noise that he is constantly enduring is just frustration. A more mature Jerry Tillery can handle this, but I gotta think it sucks. By 2022, though, his relationship with Staley's staff starts to kind of deteriorate. And in the middle of that season, they have some kind of differences. Nobody will go into specifics over this, but it comes down to some vague idea of they don't agree over what his role should be. I don't know if that means they were going to bench him and he didn't like it. I don't know if that means they were going to try to, make him rush from a different gap and he didn't like it or something. But there was some disagreement between Jerry Tillery and the defensive staff, and Staley in particular. And they will mid-season cut him. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option before that season, so it was already a little strained. And then mid-season, they can him. And he gets claimed on waivers by the rivals 4 hours away, the Las Vegas Raiders. So he will be a Raider to end out 2022, and 2022 for the Raiders isn't really going anywhere. So he's, so it's kind of unremarkable. And then he'll get re-signed and they'll bring him back for the 2023 season. In the 2023 season, he has sort of solidified and everything is sort of even back out again. He's just a journeyman. It's not too high. It's not too low. He is a rotational player. Just kind of part of that defensive line, playing next to Max Crosby. There is one moment that is worth stopping for, though, which is the revenge game at SoFi. His return to SoFi Stadium to play against the Los Angeles Chargers, again, as the road team in Los Angeles. Not so great moment. This one isn't as toxic as the USC one. It's just a bad penalty, but Justin Herbert scrambling around, runs out of bounds, and Jerry Tillery hits him way late. He'll get ejected for the hit. It's a terrible penalty. More an issue of discipline than an issue of like frustration getting the better of him in maturity. doesn't look great either way. And then all of these, Los Angeles people that remember the guy that kicked the concussed player in the head are now saying, oh, look, he is dirty again. So dirty Jerry Tillery is this narrative that's really built off of two moments that are supremely out of character. Like, it's so surface level for a guy that has had this incredibly deep run of ups and downs up to this point in his career, who has struggled and succeeded and then struggled again and then succeeded again. To boil him down to the two things you saw on ESPN, I think is ridiculously unfair. Where he is at now is a career circling the drain. He's gone from first round pick to starter to journeyman rotational guy to he's fighting with like four other guys for roster spots now. I think if you ask me, he'll make it. I will give him probably the best odds of that whole kind of group of like 4 Dean Lowrys to make it. But there is no pretense now. There's no expectation. There's no baggage. There's no, no draft pick, very little money attached to it, right? It is truly, let's look at what you can do on the field. And so maybe in a blessing, for the first time in a while, Jerry Tillery can just let his play do the talking, and it'll say what it says. Twitter Tuesday tomorrow, so get your questions in. Email me at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com or fill out the Google form in the show notes, or I'll put out a call on Monday morning. I'll see you all for that. And as always, Skol.